Denny Hamlin drops a major teaser for 23XI's future plans and possible expansion, and we're going to talk about some of the latest NASCAR Cup Series silly season rumors on today's episode. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Well, we made it, everyone. It's the first Sunday of the off-season. No NASCAR racing today. There was an F1 race at like 3 o'clock in the morning today. I did not watch it. Congratulations to Lewis Hamilton, though. Another 7-time motorsports champion has entered the fray. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. I don't watch much Formula 1, but even I know that's extremely impressive. This comes just a couple weeks, I believe, after he passed Michael Schumacher to become the all-time winningest driver in Formula 1 history. So, I mean, that's greatness right before our very eyes. But no NASCAR this weekend. The off season is finally here. It will get easier, y'all. Well, it'll get easier for a few weeks, and then around New Year's it'll get a lot harder, because at that point Daytona will be within our sights. Everyone will be getting restless and hungry for their NASCAR fix once again. The off season goes through some weird stages. Anyway, today we're talking about silly season, but before we talk about some of the recent silly season rumors, I want to talk about something Denny Hamlin and 23XI Racing posted on their Instagram stories yesterday. Yeah, this is like the second time this week we're talking about Instagram. All right, well, sometimes Instagram's where the news is at, I guess. Anyway, Denny Hamlin and 23XI Racing revealed what appears to be preliminary blueprints for what is going to eventually become the 23XI Fab Shop, the headquarters of Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin's all-new Toyota-backed race team. You can see part of the short, like 15-second video right there, but I want to freeze on a couple of these shots because this Instagram post hints at something potentially huge, not only for 23XI Racing, but for Toyota. Let's look at this thing frame by frame. Now, this opening shot, looks pretty cool. You can see what I believe would be the main entrance. If we zoom in, I don't know what that says, but it looks like in the main entrance they have space for 4 show cars. The way it's laid out kind of reminds me of how Joe Gibbs Racing's entrance is laid out. If you've ever been to the actual Joe Gibbs Racing shop in North Carolina, when you first walk in, you see, Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, Truex, Hamlin, you see all their cars kind of laid out in a similar fashion, and then you kind of have like the reception area. That's sort of how this looks. Now, we might just see 4 different Bubba Wallace 23 cars. This could hint at a possible expansion. We'll touch on that more in just a moment. You got some offices over here, office seating, engineering stuff. You got a big conference room. Look at that. How many chairs are in there? That is a pretty big table. Let's move on to this second shot. Right here, as part of the office area, you see 4 offices lined up, all labeled crew chief. 4 show cars at the front of the shop, 4 offices for 4 potential crew chiefs. You don't need 4 crew chiefs on one car. Again, looks like 23XI Racing has plans to expand. Who knows? Maybe they just didn't know what to label it. All right, let's look at this last shot. Oh, what do we have here? It looks like we have 4 open spots for 4 haulers. All right, this can't be a coincidence anymore. It's pretty clear that 23XI Racing, Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, and Toyota have plans to one day become a 4-car full-time NASCAR Cup Series operation. This obviously will not happen in 2021. Next year, it's only going to be the 23 car driven by Bubba Wallace. But with the next gen car set to debut in 2022, your guess is as good as mine. The teams themselves are not going to be able to do as much work on each individual car as they do now, because of course the next gen chassis will all be built by third parties elsewhere and will basically be shipped to the race team's doors pretty much pre-built. Obviously, the teams are going to be able to fine-tune some things here and there. The engines are still going to be made by the manufacturers. There's still going to be ways for the best teams to get edges here and there, but it's not quite going to be the same as it is now, where pretty much every team builds the entire car from scratch themselves. This is the biggest reason why many have said the next-gen car is expected to cut costs, because teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Stewart-Haas Racing, Penske aren't going to be spending tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to fine-tune every piece on the race car anymore. They're just going to buy a pre-packaged car that doesn't have all that extended research put into it. It's almost like putting a salary cap on these teams. Sure, Joe Gibbs Racing, Penske, Stewart-Haas, Hendrick, they're going to find other ways to spend a lot of money, and so the big teams are still going to spend the most money and still likely are going to get the best performance consistently. But when basically the car is the same for every team, not just the powerhouse teams, but even the smaller teams like Richard Petty and etc. When the car is basically the same, it certainly limits what extensive research you can pour money into. So in a way, it kind of artificially creates a salary cap, at least a little bit. That's probably not the right way of phrasing it, but it's going to cut costs, and that's the main way it will. So with the next gen car ultimately being cheaper to run each year, I wouldn't be shocked if we'd see a team like 23XI Racing, which has funding from Toyota Racing Development, quickly expand into a 2, 3, or potentially 4-car operation within the next 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, Toyota's already a few years too late on this. The biggest issue Toyota has had the last 5 or 6 years is they've just not had enough spots in the Cup Series to put their many talented drivers. The last several years, Toyota has really only had 5 competitive cars in the NASCAR Cup Series out of a 40-car field. If 23XI Racing truly does turn into the second powerhouse Toyota team, something Toyota really has not had in NASCAR since Michael Waltrip Racing went away half a decade ago, that would be huge for Toyota. And the next gen car coming along and ultimately cutting a lot of costs for organizations, this is probably the best chance Toyota has ever had to expand in any dramatic way like this. And when you have someone like Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, a guy who's obviously a world-class competitor and brings the money, teamed up with a guy who knows NASCAR, has been in racing his entire life and has had a tremendous amount of success. If you have both of those guys willing to lead this team over the next not just 2 or 3 years, but 5, 10, 15 years, this is easily the best opportunity Toyota has had in years to expand. So I would not be shocked looking at those plans. Obviously very preliminary, very early on. I don't even know if they broke ground on building this new facility or however it may be. Still, it looks as though Toyota is planning to expand its footprint in the NASCAR Cup Series. How might that work out with the charter system in place as it is now? I don't know. Adam Stern, actually from Sports Business Journal, reported last week that NASCAR charters are starting to appreciate in value, bolstered by the new business model that's set to dramatically reduce operating costs. And you see a quote from Scott Prime: "In a year of incredible uncertainty, there has never been more demand for NASCAR charters." Obviously, we know of the several new teams planning to begin racing in the Cup Series next year, 23XI Racing being one of those. I'm sure behind the scenes, Toyota executives are already planning ahead, trying to secure charters for 2022 and beyond. I find it really interesting that Denny Hamlin is willing to put that information out there when it's clear that 23XI Racing being a 2 or 3 or 4 car operation is still years away. Putting that out there so early on so that people on social media and in the media and people like me could speculate on it seems risky, seems very ballsy, but there you go, Denny Hamlin. It was interesting. Now let's talk a little bit of silly season. Friday, I uploaded a video where I recapped some of the major NASCAR Xfinity Series moves that were made at the end of the week. Lost in the shuffle a bit last week were reports, again from Adam Stern at Sports Business Journal, that Corey LaJoie may have a new home in the NASCAR Cup Series for 2021. Stern tweeted just a few days ago that Corey LaJoie is favored to land at Spire Motorsports next year. He says Spire has also had talks with Team Hendrick about possibly buying parts and equipment from the powerhouse organization. The second part of that report is what I find the most interesting. Now obviously I like Corey LaJoie. He's been on this channel before. I've been on his show before. So it's exciting to hear that he is close to finalizing a deal with Spire to stay in the Cup Series full time next year. But I want to focus on that second part because on the surface, Corey LaJoie moving from Go Fast, which is like a 25th, 30th place car, to Spire, which is also like a 25th to 30th place car, doesn't sound all that inspiring. But that second part is extremely interesting. The idea that Spire Motorsports, which ran Chevys last year, could enter into some sort of technical alliance with Hendrick. That could be a serious boost to their operation, and it would make sense. Spire now has 2 charters. They're planning to run 2 full-time teams next year, and next year's sort of a weird gap year before the next gen car. Just like how Trackhouse is getting a lot of equipment from RCR next year, perhaps Spire could be getting a lot of equipment from Hendrick next year. And I don't know if this is just going to be a one-year, one-off deal, and then when the next gen car shows up, everyone's on their own again. I have no idea, but at least in the short term, this could be a boost to Spire Motorsports, could help them be a little bit more competitive. Now, of course, we don't know the extent of this potential alliance. Again, even if it goes through, I wouldn't expect that Spire car to be better than a 20th or 25th place car most weeks. Still, maybe a slight upgrade for Corey LaJoie. Maybe that letter he wrote to Rick Hendrick way back at the beginning of the year, maybe it paid off. Maybe that's what's helping lead these discussions a little bit. You never know. If you remember a few months ago, the owner of Spire Motorsports actually went on Dale Jr.'s show, and he seemed to convince Dale Jr. that, hey, Spire's not just here to ride around the back and collect a paycheck and bank off the charter system. Jeff Dickerson reiterated that the team's goal is to ultimately get competitive in the next gen era. Whether that be through a technical alliance with Hendrick, whether that be through just the next gen car kind of helping equalize the field a little bit, however that may be, Spire seemed to at least convince Dale Earnhardt Jr. on air that they're not just there to ride around in the back. Who knows if that's true? I mean, obviously, Spire Motorsports the last couple of years has really just rode around in the back and collected what money they have. Has not been a super exciting operation. They did get a win with Justin Haley at Daytona next year. Rain shortened win. All right, they got a win. Wow. But I still don't know how seriously to take this information. But if Corey LaJoie does end up there, I think they're getting a solid driver, a driver who knows how to take care of his stuff. And who knows, if they do end up aligning with Hendrick at some point, maybe they do sneak into the top 10 or top 15. Maybe this becomes the best opportunity Corey LaJoie's had in his Cup Series career. You never know. No word yet as to who the second Spire Motorsports driver may be. There's plenty of drivers available, I'm sure, but we'll talk about that when the news eventually breaks. That's all I've got for today. Leave a comment down below. What do you think of 23XI's proposed plan to expand here in the coming years? What does that mean for Toyota? How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR during the racing season, during the off season, 24/7, 365. We talk racing. And as as always, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. Really do appreciate the support even during the off season. More to come this week. Have a great rest of your Sunday, a great rest of your weekend. I will see you all again very, very soon. Should have some surprises, maybe some guests in store early in the week. Stay tuned for more. I will see you all soon.